Oh my gosh, what are we doing? I don't know. Hey everyone, this is Travis Locato with another Whiny Parent podcast, and I am back to discuss Fringe episode 2 from season 1. This episode is called The Same Old Story. I love the show. If you didn't get the sense of that from listening to the my take on the pilot episode, then yeah, the show's amazing. And I'm going to say that a lot throughout this entire season. And it's a show where even the introduction I love. The intro has this scene where you have these molecules kind of pushing through and changing. You have these descriptions popping up on the screen, and I've never skipped the intro of the show ever, and I think that might be the only show I've never done that with. So it's great. Uh, and if you haven't uh, watched Fringe before, or you have not seen episode 2 before, here is your general spoiler warning. So if you haven't watched Fringe and you want to not be spoiled ahead of time, go watch it and come back. This will be sitting out in the internet ether, so don't worry about missing my thoughts. They'll be here when you come back. Um, so I would have to say that this episode starts fairly calm. You have a man getting up from bed, and his woman is in bed still, so you can kind of understand that you know, they had their moments together, and so, but you can tell that the guy's a bad guy. He's pulling needles in some type of medicine or drugs out of his bag, and it's clear his intentions aren't good. And then you have this all of a sudden, the woman bursts out of bed, screaming in pain, and you see her stomach moving. It it's like you were watching a sequence from Alien. And you're like, what's happening? what what's going on here? From this moment, as soon as she gets up from bed, and she goes down, they're at a motel, so she walks down the steps of the motel. He follows her after gathering things. They get in a car. He takes her to the hotel, or takes her to the hospital, drops her off. He bolts, gets out of there because obviously he's a bad guy. It is possibly the most excruciating scene to watch and listen to. There's this combined effect. You see her stomach growing and moving in front of you, and when she's dropped off at the hospital and attendees come and get her, put her on a stretcher, you know, take her into the ER, and they ask her if she's pregnant. She's like, "What?" They ask, "How far along are you?" She's like, "I'm not pregnant. What are you talking about?" And all the while, she has these bursts of this awful scream, and it's just excruciating. There's no other way to describe it. It's You can feel, like, you get the tingling on your skin because you're afraid of feeling what she's feeling. And and she gets to the, like, emergency room or operating room, wherever they place her, with doctors and nurses all surrounding her. And then you hear this, along with the screams, you hear this, like, tearing sound that came from within her body, and she goes limp, and she's dead. And So you were thinking to yourself, what was that? And then you have a doctor say, what was that sound? Like, so it wasn't your imagination. It was awful. So then they're like, okay, well, let's cut open and get out this baby. And and then they pull out the baby, and one of the nurses screams in horror. And then that rolls into the introduction. And it's an incredible opening because for a show to make you cringe because of what's happening, I'm not a huge fan of feeling that way. I I don't like feeling that way, but it, that's what Fringe does. It presents this amazing puzzle that has to be solved, this mystery, and you just get sucked in. The awful part's now over, and so now is okay, what the heck happened? Um, it's it's yeah, it's an astounding start to an episode. Um, I will say, as an extra spoiler, if you do not like eyeballs, this might not be your best episode to watch. It's okay. So, if you're not a fan, you might want to fast forward that scene. And you know, if you haven't seen this episode and you love the pilot, like, oh, I got to keep watching Fringe. Okay, the eyeball scene is right after Olivia Dunham borrows a piece of equipment from Nina Sharp. So there's your reminder. If you don't like eyeballs, once you see Olivia get some equipment from Nina Sharp, okay, hand the remote to someone else, fast forward, whatever you want to do. But there you go. It's right there. There, all bit of eye being pulled out for an experiment. And yeah, so just want to put that out there. It's yeah, it's crazy. Uh and to get to that experiment, that scene, we have this back and forth between Walter and Peter, which is just exceptional. Uh, it's a scene where Walter shares a seemingly impossible theory, and Peter essentially just joins him to placate his delusions. We're like, okay, we're talking about this. We're really going to do this. Okay, fine. Let's play. Whatever. And this back and forth is absolutely important to the entire series. It's something the viewers will see time and time again throughout the entire show. And it's Peter's ability to connect to Walter, to understand his reasoning. It generates this kind of like hyper cognition that lets them, I don't, lets them generate ideas and then solve problems to like this insane high degree of accuracy. Um, so there's that back and forth in this episode that's great, which leads to these moments that are undeniably funny. And it's great because you have these characters that have you just say stuff straight faced, and you're not expecting something funny to come out of their mouths because they're having this important discussion. Um, so that's just another reason to continue loving this show. You had snippets of it in the first episode with that humor, continues into this episode. It's really ingrained into the show where there are these funny moments that you will get glimpses of here and there throughout the entire show. It's wonderful. I so to summarize this episode, a man is killing women and stealing part of their brains, essentially to heal himself. This man was created from an experiment that quickly grows people, but there isn't a way to turn off the accelerated aging process. So he's going in and taking the pituitary gland, and this somehow allows the person to temporarily hold the person at a young age to keep him at this young age so he doesn't continually grow fast, 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 fast and die very quickly. Um, which at the beginning sequence, when that woman goes to the hospital and they pull out that baby, 40 minutes later, he's an old man lying on the floor dead. So a baby, in a span of like 40 minutes or so, goes from baby to old man and dies from natural causes. So essentially, the killer is stuck in that same position, but he's taking parts of the brain to help heal himself. So clearly, it's not a long term solution. Hence, he's a serial killer. Um, so throughout this, uh, discovering the sequences with the killer, eventually, Walter's previous research connects to a former colleague, doctor, who worked on this aging process with him like 30 plus years earlier. And as it turns out, it's the doctor's quote unquote son who's been abducting and killing young women for the pituitary gland. And then ultimately, we learn that the doctor is, of course, helping his son because obviously that's what has to happen. It's and so we get to Walter's crazy idea to re-image like the last moments of the last murder victim. So he concocts this experiment where they are able to see the last images that this woman saw before she died, leading to needing the eyeball, um, which leads them to a warehouse district where the evil father-son duo are committing their crimes. Um, so it's a good episode. I just you just watch it and love it, and this episode gives you kind of a greater understanding of Nina Sharp's character. You can tell she's just very informed of what's going on in the world and with these investigations that are going on. And it just feels like she has a level of importance to the show. Whether or not that's a good thing, I don't know if you are able to determine at this point in the show whether or not that's a good or bad thing. Um, Clearly, later on in the season, you'll be able to tell later on in the series. But at this point, you're still kind of wondering, okay, who is Nina Sharp? What's her agenda? Is she good? Is she bad? What's the deal? So I like these moments where you're kind of uncertain about some of the people. Um, we also learned in this episode that Peter is very good with his hands. He states that he can bring anything mechanical back to life. So there's a moment where Walter remembers, oh, I have a car and I remember where I parked it. And he's like, you remember where you parked your car 17 years ago. So they go find this car, which has a buttload of research in it, plus a severed hand in a jar. Fun. Um, Peter fixes the car, so now they have a ride for future episodes. Um, and later down the road, you know, they run up with the undynamic duo of evil father and evil son. And by them, I mean Olivia and Peter, because obviously Walter's not going out into the field to search for killers. And Olivia goes on to chase the son. Um, Peter stays with the evil father, but he very quickly is able to adjust her IV and overdose her and put her in cardiac arrest. So he's able to run away while Peter has to stay and revive her. Um, and the scene where Olivia's chasing the son is pretty cool to watch. Um, as he's running away, it's obvious like he's in pain, and they're running through like in a warehouse district, so there are like hanging lamps here and there. So you'll catch glimpses of his face as he's running or when he stops. And you can tell he's aging. You can tell it's like an immense amount of pain. Um, and so she's chasing him, and you get to watch him get older during this chase sequence. And by the end of it, I mean, this guy has no other choice than just to plop down against, I think, a dumpster because he's aged to a point where he's a very old man. And seeing this, it's it's great. It's produced so well. There's like the overhead lamp that's swinging. So it's the lights flashing back and forth, light to dark, between the man and Olivia. So you're seeing glimpses of their faces. And you see Olivia, the expression on her face as she's watching this person age right in front of her. And you see her trying to grasp what she's seeing. And then you see what she's seeing, and you hear him take his last breath. And when you see the final image of him, it's nothing more than like this thin veil of a person in front of her with like aging spots and just it's it's just episode's done really well, and that sequence is amazing. Throughout this episode, we've also have learned that Olivia's questioning every single case that she worked with John Scott, her former partner who betrayed her, and everyone else that he worked for in the FBI. Uh, because this killer is someone that she investigated before with John Scott. So, in the back of her head, she's like, well, what did I miss in this case? Because clearly I missed something with him. So I have to go back through all of these cases to figure out what I missed. And she's grappling with that. And what's great about a specific moment when she is trying to cope with this, Peter is there, and he's not trying to like just dismiss and say, "Oh, everything will be okay." Um, he offers help. He's understanding that she has this burden, and he says, "Okay, how did the killer do it?" So he's trying to have her help him understand what she knows, so he can better help her find the guy once and for all. And there's just this amazing connection that you get with these characters because you feel like they are like fully vested in each other, and there's just it, it's hard not to imagine someone not loving this show because you would either, I feel like, love the stories or love one or two or all the characters in some way. And these characters are not perfect, they are flawed, and I think they're open about that, and that makes it exceptionally good to watch. So one final thing I will take from episode 2 of season 1 in Fringe is we have this scene at near the beginning of the show and the scene at the end of the show. At the beginning of the show, Walter is sleeping in a closet or trying to sleep, and Peter's just trying. Why are you in there again? And Walter brings up that he's been in a mental institution for the past 17 years, and he had someone as he slept that would sing "Row, row, row your boat," and that's how he would go to sleep, listening to that every night. And so we have that moment, and then we go through the whole episode, and when at the end, Walter's in bed, um, and I think he's reciting Fibonacci sequence numbers, I believe. I could be wrong about that. But he's going through these numbers in his head. He's thinking he's only doing it in his head. He's talking aloud, and Peter, like, he doesn't. He's not upset. He's asking him to be quiet or do it quieter, and I think that we get a better understanding of Peter trying to be patient with his father. So Walter again starts saying these numbers again. And then all of a sudden in the background you hear, row, row, row your boat. And it startles Walter, and he's like, is that you, Peter? And all Peter can do is just, yes, it's me. Just close your eyes, go to sleep. And he starts singing, and it's a touching moment. It's great. Like, you have from episode 1 where Peter wants nothing to do with his father, and already by episode 2, the way they've captured these characters in the first 2 episodes, Peter already understands that his father struggles. And it's he knows Walter is burdened with lack of clarity or whatever it might be. And it feels like there's a burden now put on Peter where he's trying to help fix him in a way. Not all together, not all at once. It's just this little snippet of singing him row, row, row you boat. So Walter can get some sleep. And it's touching. It's perfect. Um, yeah, I think the creators of the show, the directors, everyone part of it, along with the actors, they just have this nailed down from the start. And it's why it's one of my favorite shows. And even though I've watched the show many, many times, this the whole series, I keep forgetting about that eyeball sequence every time. I'm surprised by it. So maybe it's because I just block it out of my mind because it's awful to see. Um, so those are my thoughts on Fringe season 1, episode 2, um, which is called The Same Old Story. Thank you for listening to me ramble. I will be back hopefully soon to talk about episode 3. In the meantime, don't forget to head to whinyparent.com, follow the Whiny Parent. You'll receive updates when we release new content, when we release new podcast episodes. So thank you for listening, and until next time, I'll see everyone later. All right, bye.